coming on right now.
It's the Dawg Show. It's the Dawg Show. It's the Dawg Show.
You're listening to the one and only Dawg Show. Your hosts, Troop Brinson and Smooch Moncrief.
Just two dudes talking Georgia football.
All right. Troop Brinson and Smooch Moncrief with the one and only Dawg Show. Again, we're Troop and Smooch. And another week down, man. We are getting close to some football action, Smooch. Ooh. So much has been going on. We got a lot to cover tonight. Talking about some recruiting. We had a commitment today, or another commitment tomorrow.
Yeah.
And as we're getting practice reports from the team as they're having their scrimmages. And we got some other fan bases to talk about as well. We got a great reaction from last week's pod, Smooch. Some of those clips were amazing.
It came out great. One of the things that last week's show and then just the pre-show this week, which had to do with a commitment earlier today, it just revealed the difference between certain podcasts certain podcasts and their fan bases with one another. Like there's certain fan bases you can have fun with and talk ball with, and there's some that can't take a joke and they will ride a dead narrative into the ground if you let them. That part's been beautiful to watch. But yeah, it's been a great few weeks. Troop, I was thinking about this, is that you and I so often have wondered, what are we going to talk about when it gets to be this time of year? And we're now going on, this is episode 91, Troop Brinson.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Episode 91. If you're thinking, are we planning on doing something huge for episode 100? We're planning on doing 2 enormous episodes for episode 100, just so you know. But yeah, we've never run out of stuff. I remember this time last year, we were kind of just finding our feet, kind of getting going. We were at the spring game, and we have an announcement to make, Troop, right now. The Dawg Show will be at the spring game this year.
Dawg Show and friends, as a matter of fact. So we're going to meet up. And I'll be all over the campus and look to meet some of the fans. And won't be any rival fans because it's just the red and black game.
Yeah.
Man, I tell you what, Smooch. And we could, if football wasn't happening, me and you could sit here and talk for 2 hours on any subject and probably be pretty entertaining.
It'd be great.
To be honest. We could do that. But, man, you mentioned just a moment ago that you start to find out which fan bases can give it back and forth and enjoy actually going back and forth and having fun with you. But I think we found some of those fans recently, and it's surprising at some point. Sometimes all they want is a little praise. You can only beat on a fan base for so long. And if you just throw them a cookie or two, man, they come back for more, and they enjoy the camaraderie. And just that's what football is about, especially college football. And so we're kind of finding that, and we enjoy it. But it doesn't mean Mizzou. And we got some kudos for you today. We're going to talk good about you today.
Yeah,
doesn't mean we aren't going to expose you and all your weaknesses and some of your delusional fans when the time comes.
Right.
But today's a different day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a different day. Mizzou has, they are aware of the fact that they have suffered. Auburn, for instance, Auburn doesn't know they're in the middle of suffering. They are that delusional that they still think, they're just one player away.
Excellent point.
Right. And Mizzou has self-awareness to know they've struggled in the past, and now they're coming out of this dark age. They are. I said this exact term. They're cooking up something really special over there. Every time Luther Burden catches a pass, it hurts my heart because I knew in my heart he was coming to Georgia, and now he's at Mizzou lighting it up, and they're getting recruits. They're doing their thing, and they're getting excited, but they're not. They haven't crossed over. At least they haven't found their way. The delusional fans haven't found their way to our podcast yet. We're getting some of the great salt of the earth Missouri fans that are just so happy to have a shot at a winner.
Yep, and today was a big day as a quarterback that everybody wanted, Matt Zollers, who is being compared to some. I mean, man, his numbers are through the roof. He looks sensational, and people are recognizing that. So Georgia felt like Georgia was going all in on him, and I felt like it came down to Georgia and Mizzou, and he chose Missouri today. And I kind of was hearing that. Well, a lot of people were hearing that, and we don't know the reason. It could be that he was just in love with Eli Drinkwitz and that, the offense there, and he thought that was going to develop him to be the best he could be. It might have come down to dollar bills. We don't know. I have heard that their offer was bigger than Georgia. Not that Georgia couldn't make a similar offer,
right? But
they did pull, at this point, the 2025 quarterback, Matt Zollers. Congratulations to you guys. If we know how this thing works. Yeah. He don't stop the day he commits, and Georgia
please don't.
certainly won't stop recruiting him.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just got to expect that, and lots of things can change. But the day right now is won by Mizzou, and I think us Georgia fans appreciate Missouri because the last 2 years gave us a pretty good game, and we saw what they did to Tennessee this year, which we enjoyed immensely.
Warmed the cockles of my heart.
Yes. And then we saw at the end of the season what they did against Ohio State's got all the excuses, and only the teams that lose have those type of excuses.
That's right.
And they dominated that game. If you don't want to show up, your players, Florida State, Ohio State, don't want to play in a certain game, there are teams that will have their players show up and beat the brakes off you. Mm-hmm. And did either team score more than 3 points? I don't think Florida State or Ohio State.
I think that was it, yeah.
I think that was it. And so maybe SEC is just a different brand of football. We believe that. But that's why we appreciate Missouri, because they play hard, and we just like watching them play. And like I said, congratulations, guys, no doubt.
There's a couple of things I like about Missouri. Number one is they are the epitome of when we say the SEC is the most competitive conference in all of football, really all of sports, to be honest with you. What we mean is that a team that gets completely overlooked. No one talks about Missouri. As a matter of fact, I remember Tennessee, when we did the podcast last year going into the season, they were looking at Missouri. Remember, we had Tennessee Tim on here, looking at Missouri as an automatic win. They didn't even discuss the game. Missouri, well, that's a win. And so, but what you don't understand, these boys play SEC football, and they play it hard every week. When you do that, you can beat anyone. I said this the 2022 when we went into Missouri and almost got beat. And I said it last year, they can beat anyone. It doesn't mean they're going to, but it means they can at any given day because they are an SEC team with a good SEC coach. And now it's not getting to where they can beat everybody. It's getting to where they should beat most people. I mean, this team has a lot of momentum. The Tennessee beat down, the Ohio State beat down. I love how Drink and his team, they didn't get the memo that you're supposed to be afraid of Ohio State. They didn't get that. They took it right to them. Love it. Any other team would have lost before they got off the bus against the great Ohio State. That did not happen with Missouri.
And now they've got their quarterback of the future, it looks like, in Matt Zollers. And he was a name that came on the scene a little bit late for us. I didn't know much about Matt Zollers until the last few weeks. I mean, all I was thinking about was Juju Lewis this and that. But Matt Zollers, when I read more about him, I was like, I would really love to have that dude. Yeah. And he looks like, and especially since he was committing early, we talked about it a couple podcasts ago that maybe Georgia takes him and just kind of says, we don't want to deal with the drama with Juju. I don't know if it's drama or not, but it feels like he's playing a recruiting game and he's going to play it out. But he was going to commit sooner, and the question was would Georgia go ahead and take that commitment and be done with that class, that one quarterback class? That's all they want, that, or would they hold out for what a lot of people think is? It goes back and forth. I would say Juju Lewis has got the most hype and has had because of it's been years of it in the making. He's been
starting since the 9th grade, right? I mean,
so after this day when Georgia apparently lost out on Zollers, what's the possibilities that Juju is still option number one? Is he still that for Georgia? And are they going to play this game with him? Is he going to see a big possibility? He's still committed right now to Lincoln Riley and USC. Right. People are saying Alabama and Auburn are going to be heavily involved as well. And, of course, Georgia.
Yeah, Alabama, I'd be very surprised. Now, Alabama can come up with a bag, I'm sure, but, I mean, if he's going to take a bag, he'll just go to USC, and so the thing with Juju and Zollers that's different is Zollers appears to have a much higher floor and a slightly lower ceiling than Juju. Juju has a ceiling that is through the roof and a floor that, it might not work. You never know. Zollers to me just looks like a very solid, I don't want to say a low risk type of prospect. Juju, you don't know, because we talked about it earlier. He does have some of the wide receiver moxie about him. Now, sometimes that works out great, and that translates to the football field, but sometimes it doesn't. But back to your question, I think that Georgia must be heavily in the Juju Lewis race, and I think that this is another thing that we as Georgia fans we don't know what the plan is. I can guarantee you Kirby and his staff have a plan. Even if it's not Juju, they know who their guy is. But to me, this really feels like it is shaping up for a Juju Lewis to UGA. And like I said, you and I debated whether or not we would, if we had our pick of either Zollers or Lewis, which one we'd take. It does seem to me that the Dogs have probably put their eggs in the Juju Lewis basket. Otherwise, I don't think this is so much conjecture, but we do talk to a lot of people. The idea that Missouri was able to offer a much larger financial package tells me that Georgia was not, maybe not all in on Zollers. They definitely interested. You're definitely going to take him. You definitely want him. I don't know. That's just reading a lot into it, but I think that today probably revealed that, I mean, Kirby's known Kirby knew what Matt Zollers was going to do. He wasn't sitting there surprised today. It wasn't like the Caleb Williams nonsense. It wasn't like he was surprised today. So
Caleb Downs, yeah.
Oh, no, not Caleb Williams. But yeah, but Caleb Downs, yeah. So I don't know. I think Juju is the guy they've got their eye set on. And like I say, I'd love for him to be a Dog. But if not, I'm not going to hit the panic button. And, I'll tell you something funny I saw today, talking about clickbait. Here's the headline. I wrote it down. Matt Zollers leaves Georgia Bulldogs stunned, chooses Missouri. Well, it's great that he chose Missouri. That's awesome. But he didn't leave anybody stunned. Nobody was stunned. Nobody was surprised. As a matter of fact, you and I were talking last night that it looks like it's going to be Missouri, right? I mean, that was we've been talking about that all week, as a matter of fact, that Missouri looks like the trend. So congrats.
Yep. Congrats is right. But thinking about Georgia's decisions, do you roll the dice? I mean, I guess you kind of have forced to with Juju Lewis and put all your eggs in that basket now. I just don't know on the landscape who else out there that's a difference maker. And things changed. Quarterbacks develop. You got the transfer portal as well. I know Georgia wants to have a quarterback in this class, even though they just got a commitment from the 2026 number one quarterback in the country, Jared Curtis.
Right.
But you don't want to have gaps in those classes. You want to let those players compete. And if they decide to leave and go somewhere else, you're going to lose some of those. You may benefit as well. I'm not of the thought that Georgia wants to bring transfer quarterbacks in and depend on them.
No.
Those quarterbacks, yeah, they want them in the system for as long as possible, right?
That's it. You nailed it at the end. I would say that what separates Georgia from, say, a USC, Georgia routinely has 4- and 5-star quarterbacks stay in the program for 4 or more years. That is routine at Georgia. Most places, a guy comes in, if he's a top prospect, he's starting by his sophomore year, he's gone at the end of his junior year. That's a very normal thing for everyone else. Gunner is entering year 3. Beck is entering year 5. I mean, it's a senior year, but we got the COVID years in there somewhere. Brock Vandegrift was here for 3 or 4 years. That's a very common thing. Puglisi's going to be here for the long haul. And so I think that you want to have each of those filled in, but it's not quite the level of urgency that a lot of other teams face, the ones that are switching, they're starting a freshman or sophomore every other year.
Well, yeah, I don't feel that urgency either, other than just enjoying recruiting and wanting the best possible players.
It is fun.
It's kind of like with Dylan Raiola. We wanted him because he looked like a great high school player. Yeah, he had his flaws, but when he's rated so highly, we as fans want those stars because it feels good. We know when we get to campus, those stars aren't going to matter. We understand that. We understand that Puglisi, as a 3-star, could have beaten out the 5-star Raiola, and we even mentioned that, but we still want those stars to come in because we want the gloat. We want the gloat, right? The big issue, and I've heard him, Jeremy Johnson on Dogs HQ did a great job. He was talking about these two quarterbacks, Zollers and Juju, and he, some people look at Juju and compare him to like a Bryce Young, I think, but also he was comparing him more to a Trevor Lawrence, the accuracy and the command of the pocket. So that kind of a pure passer, very, very accurate, which was interesting for me to hear that because sometimes we form our own opinions without enough evidence, and we might be wrong. And maybe I'm thinking about this when I'm worried. The worry I have with Juju is this: not that he can't perform on the field, because he's taller than Bryce Young, a couple inches taller. Yeah, and I worry. I heard what his dad had to say, and that it was just that. Yes, it was just the mindset of we're not waiting around. If we're not playing, well, we might wait 1 year, and if the landscape in that quarterback room doesn't look right, we might be gone then. We might wait 1 year. We're not waiting 2 years to play. And so I go back to what it was, the stuff with Justin Fields, because we all tracked that recruitment, and we watched him on one of those quarterback TV shows, and were enamored with Justin Fields and all his traits, and he looked so good. And then when he decided to leave his own choice, there was some stuff they created there, his agent created there to get him out of Georgia that was total crap. I don't know if you remember that. We could do a whole show on that. Yeah. Because he wouldn't have left Georgia and called out that stuff if it was true, and let his sister stay and play softball. That was still what was going on at Georgia. So we knew exactly right. That was some horse manure. Yeah. So but we don't want Juju to come and leave after a year, because we saw all the vitriol created in Georgia's fan base because they obviously Kirby Smart didn't know how to handle quarterbacks. He didn't know how to keep a quarterback happy. I'm like, he was a freshman, and looking at what's happened since then, he has a freshman with serious issues and serious development needed. Yes. He wasn't ready to take over and take the reins from Jake Fromm that first year. Yeah. Maybe the next year he would have competed for it, but he wasn't ready that year. And we all see that, us even killed Georgia fans, even though we wanted Justin Fields to stay. We don't want that same kind of I don't feel like I want that same kind of a roller coaster with Juju. I want him. I just don't know if I want to deal with all the other stuff that could come along with him. Yeah, I think that the difference between in that comparison, which it's a very apt comparison, because the on the surface the approach seems to be similar. Juju has his game is more ready to play than either Fromm or Fields was back then. His precision passing is insane. His off-platform throws, there's some that look NFL level right now, and he's been that way since he was a little kid. He got his first offer in the 7th grade, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. He's been doing it for a long time, so he's more ready. And Justin Fields was just a freak of an athlete that happened to play the quarterback position, and had a lot. And let's not forget, he lost the quarterback battle to Jake Fromm. All he had to do was beat Jake Fromm. And he hasn't. And to be honest, that's played itself out. Jake Fromm is still hanging around practice squads in the NFL. And him and Justin Fields have about the same career trajectory. I think Jake Fromm has a better win-loss record. But Justin Fields has never taken that step. I think Juju Lewis is seen as more of a Mahomes type. But like you said, does the maturity and leadership, is that something that can be developed? Is he locked into this
I'm not going to sit like Carson Beck did. Carson Beck's going to go in the top 5 picks of next year's draft. I think that his model might be a good one to follow. I'm just throwing it out there. Does he stick with that? Or is that immaturity that Kirby thinks he can grow out of? Or is it a personality flaw? And like you said, that's what we have to trust our coaches for. Is I don't want to do the Justin Fields thing again. I hated it. I hated the whole thing. I hated watching it. And of all places to go, he goes to Ohio State. And, of course, they didn't win with him there either.
He did.
But, yeah, I mean.
And the thing about that, too, Smooch, is they say, well, he threw for all these yards at Ohio State. Like we as football fans can't see how that offense was structured to eliminate one side of the field.
Right.
Just to make it where all he had to look at was one side. We don't know what we're watching. And that works at that level against the teams you're playing. But then when you play real teams who play defense on all over the field, yeah, it's an issue. Mm-hmm. But I'll end with this on that topic. I don't mean to say. The only reason I feel like there's a little worry with Juju is just hearing his dad talking. And first, if you come out commit to USC, that makes me not because I fear USC, but I'm like, what are you thinking? I know Lincoln Riley's over there.
It's two completely different philosophies, right?
If you can see what Georgia, he went to Georgia practice or had a visit with Georgia a month or so ago, and he was shocked to hear that Georgia was really a good passing team. Georgia put up big numbers in the passing game. They weren't just handing the ball off 40, 50 times a game. He said it. He said, I didn't know how good Georgia was offensively. Well, I hope he's doing his homework, and I hope that he can eliminate all the noise. Yeah. And, maybe he doesn't want to come to Georgia. Maybe he wants to go out of state. But, he's a talent. There's no doubt. And Georgia's going to have to make some decisions now because one quarterback's off the board, and it's going to be Juju Lewis or somebody else in that class. Georgia will find somebody. And we would love for Juju to come on. We're going to love for Juju to bring that height and maybe bring some receivers in as well. So, because he's a big name, man.
That's the other thing with it. You hit on another big thing. When you get a guy with the moxie, when you get a guy that grabs the headlines, receivers want to come play for him. And sometimes a receiver that's, would rather go play in Heupel's system and put up some video game numbers and hope he gets drafted high, which is not happening anymore. But at one point it did. You want to see them make that decision and come play for the Dogs. But like I said, I think that it's either I try and convince myself it's his desire to play somewhere anywhere besides Georgia that led him all the way out to USC, and now he's seeing the grass isn't always greener. That's what I'm hoping is happening right now, but who knows?
We're shocking you fans. If you listen to last week's episode, I haven't heard a rival fan on Twitter talking about our podcast and maybe responding on one of our clips, saying their last podcast was just one delusional fan alert. And I actually that was a good episode, wasn't it?
You are welcome.
I said, yeah, buddy. We had a lot of fun last week, and we some weeks we talk straight football, add a little comedy, and that was more 80-20 comedy to football last week. We had a good time. April 1st did come and go, Smooch. We did have an update from Roll Tide Willie. We got an update.
Second favorite team after the Tide is the Georgia Bulldogs.
It looks like Willie likes to play the game, the recruiting game and the transfer portal. And this one may have bitten Willie as he got over his skis just a bit and was going to commit on the first. Georgia, we found out late this weekend that Georgia didn't actually have a committable offer.
That's right.
Georgia.
Yes.
Didn't. So
he did not have.
I think he sent his paperwork in, and they were like, "What? What?
Well,
no."
To be fair, he doesn't seem to be the type of person that would understand and retain large pieces of information when given to him directly. We won't take it any further than that, but it does seem like his PR team has circled the wagons and are trying to distance themselves from what looked like it was going to be a transfer just a few days ago. So and you saw like he's going to stay, and
yeah, you saw what happened after that. Trying to cover his tracks a little bit. Alabama too, trying to capitalize on his the fanfare around.
I think Alabama sucks.
Come on,
I guess,
now, Willie.
I guess the coaching staff, maybe that's the old coaching staff.
Yeah.
That's what it is. The old coaching staff. Saban and his crew would not have stood for Willie's, coming onto the field. We saw Willie this week at
on the field, true.
Practice, calling the defense. And he's got a famous saying, blitz, baby, blitz.
Bama, blitz, Bama, blitz.
Blitz, Bama, blitz.
That's it.
And so they were doing that. And I'm like, okay. I just do it. And a lot of people commented they could not see that under Nick Saban.
He wouldn't let that guy on the property.
So what is that? Where does that lead to? If Nick Saban in that last career, I mean, maybe you're not trying to create the Alabama that was under Nick Saban. You're obviously not. That's a big thing to realize. They're not trying to recreate Alabama under just like Nick Saban did. They're not trying to win championships and have a culture that demands professionalism and excellence and discipline. They aren't trying to. They've it's just going to be a lot of trying to find that clickbait,
smoke and mirrors. Yeah.
So that's why when we start seeing that hokey stuff, and we see other teams,
it was hokey. That's a good word.
When we see other teams do that cringy stuff, it's usually like a Clemson or a team that just hasn't been on the stage, the main stage very often. They start doing that kind of thing, or like Dion does that too.
Colorado. I was just about to say Colorado. Yeah, exactly.
And so that's when, as a real fan, you say that kind of makes you think that team doesn't belong, or the people who are making those decisions, something inside, and we don't really belong. We need to do this to get attention coming our way, because once football happens, talking season is over, and we need to get everything we can accomplish right now. Those, it's so obvious when you see it like that, right, Smooch?
100%, man. Two things on what you just said. Do you remember the Bama fans in Delusion when Saban retired and they bring in the new coach, and all the Bama fans on our page, on our message boards, everywhere we were, saying Saban's really not going anywhere. He's still going to have an office at Alabama. He's still going to be intimately involved. They're just going to have a guy come in to coach the team. Let me tell you something. The day Roll Tide Willie stepped onto the football field for a practice at Alabama was proof that Saban is nowhere near that building and not calling any shots. He may have an office, but pardon my vernacular, he ain't inside that office. He's not there, because that is something Saban would have never done. Because what gave Bama credibility and what endeared Bama to Bama fans was not Saban's ability to latch onto a folk hero from the fan base. It was the fact that he put ridiculously talented elite teams on the field every week. When you do that, you don't need to scour TikTok for the guy that's going to bring excitement to your franchise. If you're competing for a national championship every year, which Saban was, you don't have to go find Roll Tide Willie to be your spokesman. However, in just a few short months, we now have him leading cheers, him leading the little huddle at the end, calling plays, all of that cringy PR stuff, and it just doesn't. We got the presidential election going on right now, and every year one of the candidates does something really stupid, and they say, that's just not presidential. And there's something that's just not winning football about bringing a fan favorite kind of folk hero onto the field to kind of ingratiate yourself with the new regime.
Yeah. Maybe they think that they were in competition for Roll Tide Willie with the Dawg Show.
That could be a real big.
That was maybe a promise they made to him. Hey, we get you going to field at practice.
Yeah.
And but Kane Womack's been on a few of these clips, and maybe he's going to be a good. I say this a lot. Maybe he's going to be a good coach. Maybe Henny at USC is going to be a good defensive coordinator, but he ain't done it yet. And when this is what you lead with, these are the tactics that you lead with. It's going to give question. We're going to call it out, and it makes us question that how serious are you, or are you just trying to create a narrative or something to? I don't even know. I just know as a fan. And whether I'm an Alabama fan, a Georgia fan, or whatever, It sticks out, Smooch. It sticks out.
It does, man. Kane Womack looks like the kid that stole the keys to his dad's sports car. Like his dad hit that midlife crisis and bought that 1965 Corvette that he always wanted, and he goes out of town, and his 17-year-old son takes the keys and drives it around and is trying to hot run. That's what Womack looks like trying to run that defense to me. Like completely out of place, not in control of anything at all, but just wanting to show off, I've got the keys to this machine. Look at what I can do. And like you said, this talking season, fun season, Roll Tide Willie season is going to end, and it's going to be about the Jimmies and the Joes on the field. And I hope Womack has the same type of dedication and gifting that he seems to have for satisfying the mob.
Yes, Smooch, you got a DFA handy?
You know, I can definitely find a DFA. Let me.
Most popular segment in all of sports.
Most popular segment in all of sports. I'm sure I can find it. Here we go.
So delusion is a fixed false belief that doesn't change in light of conflicting evidence.
They don't know reality from their dream worlds, and they won't go outside and play.
A fixed false belief that is not grounded in reality.
Yes. Smooch, not since 2021. In the short reign of Tennessee has one team made back-to-back appearances on the DFA.
Yes.
The Auburn Tigers. The Auburn Tigers back-to-back this week. As we, on Twitter, talking season came up a lot.
Yes.
And we had a good time with some of those delusional fans this week.
True. There's a line in the movie Gladiator that is something that I live my life by, and it is, people should know when they're conquered. The Auburn fans keep getting up and dusting themselves off, but they don't dust themselves off to climb back up the ladder. They envision themselves as at the very top of the ladder, waiting for everyone to get to their level. They took such a beating the last few seasons. When they engaged with the Dawg Show, things only got worse. And I felt as though you and I completely extinguished whatever kind of idiocy was hitting us from the Auburn fans last week, only to see aftershocks and regurgitations of the same idiocy. But congrats to Auburn. Second time, back-to-back weeks on a DFA. It's never been done. It's never been done. Auburn, when it comes to delusion and incompetence, you are the president and the king of that group.
It's like they were emboldened by making the Dawg Show DFA last week, and then some fans come out of the woodwork and they're on social media and they're saying ridiculous things. And I think for a moment that the commentary is just in jest. It's just
right
that they don't really believe it. They just want attention. But then they started engaging in football talk, the same guys, and I was like, well, hold on. Because I was like, this don't even engage with this guy. A couple of these guys, they are not really trying to do anything but get some attention. And then they started talking about Peyton Thorne and Cam Coleman.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a basketball team. You don't have – it's more than 5 players. You can't just pick 2 players you got hope for and think they're going to lead you to glory.
Well, I was going to, our brother, Coach Hayes, was on the program last week, and he was talking about the fallacy that Auburn was buying into, is that these freshman playmakers are going to come in and they're going to blow it up, and they're just going to be everything, which never happens, especially very rarely at the wide receiver position does a freshman just blow it up, unless his name is Brock Bowers. But sure enough, that's exactly what they said. I said, hey, I hope Auburn gets better. I like Hugh. I think he's fun. But they said, no, we've got tons of playmakers, and they name all these freshmen, these true freshmen coming in. And I'm like, the problem with that is those freshmen are going to have to play guys at Missouri and at Georgia and even at Bama and at Tennessee that have been playmakers for years. And the idea that you're going to go to the prom this year and go dominate in the SEC next year is pretty silly. And it is the type of silly notion that only an Auburn Tiger could get behind. Maybe a Tennessee Vol, but they're very quiet right now. So,
and Smooch, I can get behind that Cam Coleman might turn into a good receiver. He might flash next year and make some plays. you don't win off that. You don't win anything sustainable or anything of a significance off a receiver. Right. I mean, if you're set up, if your whole team is set up to win, and we've had to educate Tennessee on how this works as well. They've had some good receivers and had a good quarterback or two, or a serviceable quarterback last year in Milton. It lost 4 games last year because you win in the trenches, Auburn. And I know you feel, again, emboldened is a key word, not just from what we said, but, you hung around. Actually, you had to lead against Georgia late in that game.
That's right.
And credit to you, also lost to New Mexico State. So you don't see Georgia doing that. And, I just don't know what to say other than we're glad that you feel like you're back, and we're glad that you engaged with the Dawg Show, because that's what we crave. And, we had some good back and forth, and as long as you guys can take it, and we don't mind dishing it out, and we'll take it as well. But back to back.
But the problem is, and I tried to explain this, and we care on the Dawg Show. That we have an entire bumper that talks about how much we care. It's what we are. As Jerry Clower would say, we really want to break you from sucking eggs. Like, I don't want you to speak and people think you know nothing about football or sports whatsoever. So I'm trying to help. When your claim to fame is a loss that you suffered against a team that you lost by fewer points than you were supposed to, and that's what you're claiming as momentum for the next year. You do not hear Georgia fans sitting around going, you realize we only lost to Alabama by 3 points? Do you know how good we're going to be this year? We only lost to Bama by 3, and we're going to be awesome. No, that was a loss. By the way, it was a loss we shouldn't have taken. Look, you lost to Georgia. The idea that you're claiming this, it was a lot closer than it should have been, so we're on our way up. I don't want to break your hearts, Ed, but to end the delusion, I'm going to let you in on something. We struggle as Georgia fans with when Kirby plays a weak team, and Auburn is a weak team. They're no different than New Mexico State, for instance, in terms of the way Georgia looks at them. When Kirby plays a weak team, Kirby goes in with a vanilla game plan. He doesn't tip any of his cards for stronger teams, and it is frustrating as a fan. I will tell you straight up, it is frustrating as a fan. Ball State game plan, things like that. The Samford game a couple of years ago, so frustrating to watch because Kirby is working on very specific things. He's doing now. You guys, you took advantage of that vanilla game plan and you made the game closer than it should have been. But you watch this team play Kentucky. You watch this team play Ole Miss when people were picking Ole Miss to win. That is not a team you want anything of. That's not the team that played you that day. That was a team kind of dialed back. I don't know why or how that happens. I don't know what happens in the game planning that leads to that. I will tell you, it's frustrating as a fan, but the idea that Auburn is seizing upon that to somehow hang some sort of relevance for 2024, it's just not going to happen. And you put when you start putting your eggs in the basket of Peyton Thorne, you've lost the argument. Lost the argument.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Peyton Thorne, come on, guys. He's not leading any team to anything. We all fall in love with our own players. That's the problem, I think. And we overvalue our players. And I'm sure Georgia fans, we overvalue some of our players as well. Georgia's freaking locked and loaded. They are, the cupboard is thick at Georgia. And so there are players we will overvalue and we'll think they should be more than they are. Mm-hmm. But some of these other teams that do that, then you're basing it off lesser players. You're basing it on Peyton Thorns. If we were to feel the same way about Gunnar Stockton, maybe you could say that, but Peyton Thorne, come on, Peyton Thorne. I mean, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt for one more week, or we're going to let you slide. maybe not. I mean, if it was Florida's the one team that we're not going to give them anything, and they're going to take our vitriol all year long, even though they haven't introduced themselves to 2024 in any kind of way. No, at least Missouri and Auburn, and who else been talking? We talked with USC recently. Yeah, some of these teams are definitely stepping onto the radar of the Dawg Show.
But I will tell you this about USC. When they got defeated on the Dawg Show, they just shook our hands, took their ball, and went home. They understood they were beaten, they were bested, and it was over. Not the case with Auburn. They're like that dog you keep beating with a 2x4 that keeps curling up next to you at night. They just keep wanting to coming right back. I can't understand it, but they're Peyton Thorne fans.
Well, I didn't hear anything from Walker White, and we made him famous last week, but we didn't hear anything on social media from Walker White. So maybe he did.
Well, he had to take his page down, right? Because he told somebody, he said something up. He made a bet about taking his page down, so then he had to change his name, and then it was a whole thing. I don't get into the Walker White drama, but there was some, and I got to say, a lot of it was partially our fault, and so we do take pleasure in that. So
yes. So we had to give you a little bit of the delusional fan after last week's epic delusion.
Woo.
And we had so much fun with Zulu, Trojan, and Walker White, and whoever else joined. And then I think it created some conversation, which is what we always want: engagement on social media. That's really what we want, folks. And right now, Mizzou, they're getting some good engagement in a good way, and because Georgia is at a point in their program where we can lose a recruit that we really want and be okay.
So true. Yeah.
And there's not going to be any panic. We mentioned that earlier. No panic. There are lots of time to find some of those key players, and Georgia's fortunately doesn't have a whole lot of holes in their roster. And I worry about some of these guys you bring in. I'm always thinking, well, who's going to leave? Because every recruit that comes in for Georgia, even though I want them, I'm also thinking on the other hand, who's that going to force out? Is a player sitting on Georgia's roster right now thinking like, I'll be dang.
Yeah, how did this happen?
Well, I got to start checking my options out.
Yeah, we saw that, right? A few years ago, I've been a Gunnar Stockton fan since he was in the 10th grade. He's playing secondary in the 10th grade. Love Gunnar Stockton. And you talk about falling in love with a player. I want him to turn into a player that takes the starting job and never looks back. But I loved Brock Vandegrift. Right? I loved him, and there wasn't room enough for both of them, and one of them left. And that actually tells the Georgia fan who's winning in practice. We don't get to see practice, but Brock's he's at Kentucky this year, right? Going to get it done there, and there is that type of thing that when you have the cupboard that Georgia has, when you take these great players in, you're going to say bye to other players. Do not think that Janelle Aguero and KJ Bolden coming into a team doesn't mean that certain players aren't going to be pushed out. It just has to, right? I mean, those types of players demand spots, and they demand them early because of their ability. And so, KJ Bolden's getting rave reviews, and so is the what's the cornerback, the 5-star cornerback that
Ellis
came in. Ellis Robinson is just we keep hearing Champ Bailey comparisons is what I keep hearing at practice. And so that's going to force someone out. That's just what it's like to be an elite program. And so, we talked about Georgia's panic button last year. Get your hand off of it. Everything's going to be fine.
Yeah. Get used to how recruiting works, and you'll be a lot better for it.
Yeah.
There may be, when some of these recruits come in, Smoots, they're players that may decide to leave who we spent a whole show talking about a couple years ago,
right?
Because they're that level of players. But Georgia's not going to stop the way they do things. They love these players to hang around and get their last couple years. I mean, that's really the way you prefer to build a program, is to have it be dominated by juniors and seniors. And the younger guys are learning, and the guys who are super duper special will force their way onto the field early. But otherwise, they're just learning the system and the culture, and they're going, when they hit the field, they'll be ready to play. Malachi Starks
started for a national championship team as a true freshman because there was no other. He was not going to be denied.
But I say all that. That's to say, well, coaches would love it, but in today's age, you got to have those players come in and play early, or they'll transfer out, or you won't get the maximum value out of them because they're gone. If they're really special, they're gone after the third year anyway. Mm-hmm. So you want them to play early as possible. You start to see, we're going to see this year as we transition into talking more Georgia football right now, what we've seen. You're going to see this year exactly what I'm talking about. Even when you had super, super talented players come onto your roster, that second year is the year that you should see what they're all about. And if they were able to take what they learned from that first year plus, because some of them came on early in the spring and or January actually, and if they have been able to take that and grow, get bigger, stronger, and learn the system, learn the culture, learn what's expected of them, how to go about their business. And those are the players that you can have players who are equally talented, but those players who get it in that manner, who learn that aspect, those intangibles, those are the ones that really jump off the page really early. So you'll see some player, like I think one of the players we've heard a lot about this week, and we've talked about him, is Damon Wilson.
Oh my gosh.
And he's just that kind of, he was a freshman last year, sophomore this year, played on and off last year. And he did play a pretty good bit. But we saw what he was capable of. Now we see the growth in the off season, and he's put on muscle, put on 10 pounds. And you hear Kirby Smart mention him almost with restrained jubilation.
That's so true. That's so true.
As he holds back a little bit and doesn't want to pile too much on a player like Damon Wilson until he does it, in the game. But he's one of those special players. You're going to see C.J. Allen as well on that defense. There's going to be some other players that jump out too. But that second year, Smooch, and that's also why it's tough to bring in players like Ra and Dominic and think they're going to just automatically blow up that first year. I will say A.D. Mitchell did a great job going to Texas.
Yeah, he did.
But that's not always the way it works out. It takes a year or two to acclimate to a new program, a new coaching staff, new expectations, and to really have chemistry with your teammates.
Well, A.D. Mitchell's a top 15 pick in the draft, so it's a little different. If you're top 15 pick in the draft, you can pretty much play wide receiver anywhere, and he proved that. Let's not forget A.D. Mitchell came in as a 3-star at Georgia, by the way. So, but these kids coming up, most kids get better from 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade in high school. That is very common. The natural biology, you're getting bigger, you're getting faster, you're getting stronger. Some players never get better after their 20th birthday. They just really don't. Some players get better until their mid-30s or early 30s. And those are guys that have these big NFL careers, you see. So you never know what, some of it's the character of the player himself, and some of it's just his natural God-given gifts. What is going to be? Is Damon Wilson, is he going to be a small linebacker, big safety that comes in and is really pretty running around on the field? Or, like we've seen, is he going to grasp the system? Is he going to come in at 240 pounds of chiseled muscle now, like he is, with all of the explosion? He's a grown man this year. And he's done that within the span of 2 seasons. And that type of thing, I don't know if you can predict it, but we do see it with regularity with the Dogs, where there's these players that come in, they've got all the traits, and then they just blossom. Sometimes it's between year 1 and 2. Sometimes it's between year 2 and 3. And I think part of the reason I've heard other Georgia podcasts lament that Georgia doesn't have more guys in the draft this year, whatever it's going to be, 9 players drafted, and I don't know what it's going to be, 10 players drafted, whatever. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they're not losing as many players. A lot of these players are still there. Key contributors, key starters are still at Georgia. And that's what happens when you play so many freshmen and when guys buy into the program and they stay for their 4th year. And so I really think this is the year you're going to see jumps. You're going to see jumps on these uber athletic linebackers in year 2 and year 3, like with C.J. Allen and with Damon Wilson. But then you're also going to see, I'm really counting on these D linemen that stayed for their senior year to take another next jump, a la Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt did, right? When they stayed for that last year and took huge jumps. And so all of that can spell a really good season. I don't think you lament the fact you don't have as many in the draft this year. It means you're retaining more, right?
Coach Smart, Smooch, did say just that. I don't know if you heard him, I think last week, talking about players who stayed and came back, because he was talking about players like Stackhouse and Warren Brinson.
Exactly who I was thinking of.
And he expects those guys to improve too. He expects those guys to take to move up another level in terms of their production. And he's made the point. He said, if they don't, then it was a mistake for them to come back. Why would they come back and just give us the same thing they gave us last year?
That's so perfect.
They should look to improve everything about their physicality, their in the weight room and on the field as leaders, and their production. Number one, their production. If they don't, then it was a mistake to bring them back or for them to come back, whichever one that was. So he has expectations even for those guys who've been at Georgia for 4 years.
Yeah.
And so I felt good about him saying that, because I looked at those guys and was like, kind of, I got hopes that Warren Brinson can do some things if he can stay on the field. Players like Stackhouse, I was kind of like Logue last year. I'm like, they just are what they are. They just they're good, solid players. They're not gonna lose you any games. They're not gonna win you any games probably either. But they're just good, solid pieces. But the expectation that Coach Smart has is that they're going to elevate their games, and along with those younger guys coming in who have a much higher ceiling, following in that line, that, man, you can have a special defense. And Coach was talking about it. He was talking about what we saw in scrimmage, and they say Carson Beck is in complete grasp of this offense. He is that dude.
Yeah.
This year, making every throw, just knowing exactly what he needs to do. Kind of like Stetson did in his final year. Mm-hmm. The year before, the first national championship, Stetson made plays at key times, but he was prone to making some, gunslinger type mistakes as well.
Right.
And we didn't, halfway through that season, going into the late in the season, we were like,
going into the playoffs, we didn't know if it was Stetson's team. Right.
Stetson, I don't know if he can do it.
Yeah.
But that next year, as a full-time starter, he took a huge, huge leap forward.
It was his team. Yeah.
Beck, with even way more talent than Stetson's doing that this year, so he's going to have one of those iconic seasons, I think, for Georgia so if he stays healthy. But the point that I was making is that you see players like Carson Beck. He's waited his turn. He's gotten better and better each year, Smooch.
Yeah.
These other players are going to have their opportunity too. And on offense, you expect Georgia's offense to be churning and burning. And there's some players in there who are going to take some steps forward that I can't wait to see. The player, having a player like Beck as your offense is going to make that so much easier.
Yeah. I think that it's the talent's never been the question with Beck. We saw even in 2022, some of the best passes thrown that season were thrown by Carson Beck coming into games late. The arm talent was there. I think that this is sound like a really weird thing to say, but with Brock Bowers leaving this team, Carson Beck is the de facto leader of this team now. I think the leader last year on offense was Brock Bowers. It was his team. He had built this team. He had won 2 titles with them. He's the best that's ever played that position in college. And so with him moving out, it's just this natural progression, this ascension or coronation, if you will, as Carson Beck as the unquestioned leader of that offense. And he seems to have embraced it. And we are hearing nothing but crazy praise. I will say this. We never heard praise like we're hearing from about Carson Beck. We never heard that about Stetson. We heard Stetson balled out at practice. He's probably going to get the start over JT Daniels this week. That's the kind of insider stuff we heard before. And we were like, huh? He did what now? But with Carson Beck, it's like there's no one even – it's his team. It's Carson Beck's team. The fight for the number 2 quarterback. Yeah. It
is a fight for the number 2. I lost my train of thought as I was talking about Beck, where I was going with that, and then I just remembered.
Do it now before you forget again.
Reports from practice were that the offense was dominating. And a lot of that is because of Carson Beck and that offensive line, that people are saying – it's kind of surprised to me, at least a few months ago, thinking that this offensive line was going to come together like this and be so deep and so dominant. But that Beck and that line of scrimmage, they are really having their way in these scrimmages. Yeah. And even Coach Smart was saying, don't let that make you think that our defense isn't good. We're missing a lot. We're missing like 5 starters. Yeah. We're missing Malachi Starks. We're missing Smile Mondon. We're missing Dawkins on the line of scrimmage. I think maybe Kristen Miller missing him too. We're missing a lot of players who are going to carry their weight. You're going to be big players on this defense. So even though he says, we may not be statistically like we were in 2021, that's a pretty high standard, pretty high bar.
Yeah, that's not going to be met again, I don't think.
Yeah. He said this is a really good defense in comparison to other teams in the country. And the fact that Carson Beck's carving them up, don't let that make you think Georgia's defense is not very good.
Yeah.
I thought that was so good.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I really do. I think that when you're talking about a guy that has an NFL arm like Carson Beck, and if he's in complete control of the offense, there's not too much a defense can do. I mean, you can slow him down, and we're hearing that. We're hearing of receivers stepping up. We're hearing of Carson in complete control. I will tell you this defense, though, this defense has more question marks than last year and far greater upside than last year. And so it just depends. You said this about Tennessee. It depends how you answer those questions. What is the answer going to be? What does TID, one of my favorite 5 stars to come through the D-line at Georgia in a long time, what is the progression for a TID? What is the progression for this D-line? Are these linebackers, Pop Johnson is gone because of the ridiculous killers behind him at linebacker. What is that all going to look like? The fact that a guy like Carson Beck goes out there and slices them up at practice and completes a huge bomb to Arian Smith, that should make you feel good about Arian Smith and about Carson Beck, not bad about the defense. And I think that's the key. Arian Smith is a huge if he could just take the next step this year, he could change his whole life with this season. This is it for him, right? He struggled with injuries. He had the yips last year. It's a terrible thing to see someone get. And now here he is, and he has this golden opportunity with a quarterback that can get the deep ball to him, which is a huge thing. So, yeah, I think that this team may be stronger on offense than defense, but that doesn't mean the defense is weak. And I think that's kind of what Georgia fans need to get ready for.
I'm glad you brought up Arian Smith because I was one of his detractors because he's one of those players that looks like he's more a track player than a football player, just the way he, some of the mistakes he's had, drop balls and sometimes being out of position. But what made me really take note of Arian Smith was that the coaching staff they knew what they had with him.
That's right.
Even when he was going through a rough spell, they didn't just put him on the bench.
No,
they were still trying to keep him in the games and give him handoffs, give him little short passes. He was valuable enough to them that they didn't say, okay, well, somebody else can do better than you can. You can't when the lights come on, you're not ready for prime time. He had
transfer offers all over the place, so they saw enough to keep him. Yeah,
we were ready. I was ready. I was like, okay, I've had enough. I've heard enough. I've seen enough of Arian Smith. I know what he's all about.
Yeah.
But the fact that the coaching staff valued him to keep him integrated in the offense meant something. And now they're pouring into him again this year, and we're hearing that he is taking the biggest step, one of the biggest steps on the team in leadership and just making plays. And he's been there long enough, and so he just gotta make the plays when they're available to him. He's got a special set of gifts, right?
Yeah, I watched I was just telling you this in our pre-show. I watched the Georgia-Florida State game yesterday on the treadmill. The whole game. And I didn't stay on the treadmill for 2.5 hours, but I started on the treadmill. But I saw exactly what you just said, Troop. They were determined to get the ball in his hands. And he dropped, in that Florida State game, he dropped a screen pass with 4 blockers in front of him and nothing but green real estate. He dropped the screen pass. They didn't put
him on the bench and leave him there, did they?
No. They got him a touchdown. They handed the ball to him. They did anything they could to get it in his hands. And then he delivered. And I think that there's a reason. It's like you just said. There's a reason for that. They know something that maybe we don't know because it hasn't been seen yet. Just like why in the world, once Stetson Bennett left this team, would you bring him back on scholarship as a whatever it was, junior, after he had been away at a smaller school for a year? Why would you bring? Because they knew something. They knew there was something there that they could develop. And we're seeing the same thing with Arian Smith. And so that would be the feel-good story of the year if Arian Smith was a breakout player on this offense with a rocket arm quarterback and a guy with low 4.2 speed could put it all together for one season. That would be amazing.
Maybe he's this year's Xavier Worthy. You never know.
There you go.
So it's nice to have those weapons. I want to talk quickly about Georgia's had some number changes. So you guys, we're going to be at at the spring game in a little bit over a week. We're going to be looking at these numbers. But some very interesting number changes as C.J. Allen went from 33 to the iconic number 3. There's a pretty good linebacker with number 3 for sure. And running backs too. Number 3 is a big number as a Georgia Bulldog. Let's see. Damon Wilson, 35 to 10. He took Pop Johnson's number, so he's back to 10 now.
That's a rough one. That's a hard one to swallow. I like Pop.
Anthony Evans went from a number that you don't pay attention to, 17 to 5. So he moved to 5. And of course, that meant that
the Ra
Thomas, I think he moved to his old number from 5 to 9. Okay. So Ra is now a 9. Let's see, Daniel Harris. So we got used to seeing him as 15 last year, and he's moved to he's number 7. That looks like another linebacker for Georgia. Who is that? Is that Tyndall? Channing Tyndall?
Channing Tyndall was 7.
Or was it Walker? Which one was it? Who was?
No, I think you're right. I've
been Tyndall. And then Colby Young, he didn't switch, but they gave him number 8. So he's either Dominic Blaylock or Terrence Edwards. Take your pick.
There you go. Let's go with Terrence Edwards. Actually, Dominic Blaylock freshman season will be just fine. He can do
without the injuries.
Without
the injuries, maybe Dominic Blaylock was the next Terrence Edwards.
That's right. I love it. I love it. I'm terrible with numbers, so this will take me. Hopefully by December, I'll have these down so we can actually, know what's going on in the field. You ought to see me at the spring game. I sit there with my little magnifying glass and the program on every play. What was the kid this past year that had he's gone? He left. He transferred.
I can't remember his name. He had the punt return for the touchdown.
Yeah, and the kick return. He did oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. But we did the same thing at the game. Who is that?
Right.
then he transferred out. But yeah,
we're looking forward to it, man. And I can't believe the spring game's only a week away. Our recruiting is at a fever pitch right now. A lot of these players are getting their visits in. Leading up to some big dates in early June, Georgia typically has a huge recruiting.
Mackay Muse.
You looked it up. There we go. Eminem.
Sorry.
You may never hear from Mackay again. I don't know. I hate to say that, but
yeah,
I don't remember where he went. I know that Pop Johnson and Vandegrift are at Kentucky.
Yeah.
So, man, Smooch, so before this show, I got home a little bit late tonight, and I was like, man, I knew what I wanted to talk about, what we needed to cover, but I still, I need to get Texas involved so much with the Dawg Show. I say that every week. I jumped on, so I went on like Twitter, and I was like, let me pull up Texas Longhorn page. I'm going to find something. So I haven't found anything yet. I think it's going to require us to send out an emissary to have a conversation with their people and see if we can get them to come on out here and visit us on social media.
Yeah, we haven't had really any interaction with the Texas fans. I will tell you this. One of my coworkers is a diehard Texas fan from Dallas originally, and I got him really going the other day. This might be a good way to do it. We might do it on our social media. What's the over-under for number of weeks Quinn Ewers will start before the fans start demanding Arch Manning?
There you go. That's so simple, Smooch.
So simple. It's genius,
All we got to do is to say something controversial about Texas. It sounds ridiculous.
Right.
Get them to come on. Then we can have some football talk, but we got to.
Yeah. You got to tickle that buying bone first.
There we go. That is definitely, and you Dawg Show fans, help us out. That's what we're going to do this week. We're putting it down, right? Bookmark it.
Yeah.
We're going to say some provocative stuff about the Longhorns and make them a part of the show next week. Who knows what do they realize they're not in the Big 12 ananymore? I'm not sure.
They played their last game like they were in the Big 12. Yeah.
You'd think they would check in with us first when they come to the SEC. Right?
You think they would. They'd be like, hey, are we cool here? It's like even when you get backstage passes, right, and you go back to see the band, you still show them the pass. And like, is it cool that I'm back here? Can I hang out with you guys? Texas has never done that with us. They just assumed they belonged.
Yep. So we're bookmark that. We're going to talk to them this week and hopefully now, if they don't give us any feedback, then we're going to assume that they're not ready for the SEC.
No.
I think they are, though. I think they feel like they are. And so Georgia plays them pretty early. Georgia plays them pretty early this year. So
it's
going to be a delicious schedule. Cannot wait
Yes.
Smooch, you can find us on our social media. It's very active this past week. You can always go back. That stuff is still churning from the stuff we put out last week.
Indeed.
And Dawg Show Pod, DAWG, Dawg Show Pod.
The Dawg Show Pod. Yeah.
The Dawg Show Pod. That is on TikTok, Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. Let's still call it Twitter. Yeah. And
Instagram and YouTube. Instagram as well. Yeah. Instagram is most of our fans are over 30, so there's not a lot of Instagramming, but yeah, Instagram's up as well. But yeah, YouTube took off pretty well this week. We're just getting it populated, but you guys are doing a great job. But give us a like, give us subscribe, follow, and then on the podcast itself, guys, give us a 5-star review. Keep pushing that algorithm. We added a ton for the Dawg Show of followers this week on our podcast. It was, God bless you guys for that. But keep it coming, and like I say, let us know what you want to talk about. You can contact us at any one of those social medias. DMs are open for us. We don't have that. We don't have the 8 million fans or anything, so you can message us anytime you want to.
We are growing, though, not 8 million strong just yet, but Dawg Show
on our way. Yeah,
on the rise. Yes, sir.
Indeed,
all right,
sir.
Next week maybe have Coach Hayes. Coach Hayes, we missed you this week. We'll get back with you next week and break down some maybe Texas football. Who knows what's going to happen? Mason Short should be committing tomorrow. Offensive lineman. Not sure. Looking at Clemson in Georgia, so be on the lookout for that. We'll send something out on his commitment tomorrow on the socials.
Absolutely. I love everything about it. You ready to do this?
Let's go, baby.
You go out here and get 5-star players, supposed to be the best of the nation, and you can't win a damn ball game, you suck.
This is the Dawg Show with Troop and Smooch.
Come on, Willie.
Come on, Willie.
Dawg Show. It's the Dawg Show. It's the Dawg Show. It's the Dawg Show.